I've always been a big fan of reading other people's strange encounters, but after a night of exploring this rabbit hole, I feel like it's time to share my own story. This started my first day moving into student halls. I was greeted by a very friendly guy named Dominic. He was very campy and told me he was gay early on in the conversation, and I didn't have a problem with that. He offered to help me unpack in my room, then go out for a drink with me. Although I thought this was a little overfamiliar, I was delighted that I had made a friend so quickly and accepted his offer. He put a tremendous amount of effort into helping me put everything in the appropriate places in my room. We then went for a drink at the student bar. I made a point to tell him that I was straight, as I suspected he might have a bit of a crush on me, hence why he was being so nice. But he didn't show any signs of dismay and just continued chatting regularly with me. I liked him a lot. He was very intelligent and interesting to talk to, and I was pretty pleased that I had a new friend already. I was worried that I'd be lonely in the uni dorms. He didn't live in the same building as me, but he lived just across the way. I was studying creative writing, and he was studying business, but we started to hang out a lot. Although I liked Dominic, I did start to find him a little overbearing. He would send me texts and messages on Facebook all the time, and he'd get upset if I didn't reply, even if it was only for about 5 minutes. He would always want to know what I was doing, and if I disappeared off Facebook for a while, he would want to know where I'd been all day. One time, I even sent him a text mentioning that I was on the train. He texted back, "Why are you on a train? Why am I not invited to wherever you're going?" For the record, I was on my way to my part-time job. I made quite a few other friends that semester, and Dominic would always show visible signs of displeasure whenever they were around. And whenever I talked to him about them, he would tell me that he disliked them and that I shouldn't trust them. He was very possessive, and I personally can't stand clingy friends. So I tried to distance myself from him for a bit. But the more I pulled away, the tighter he held on. I still hung out with him and still cared about him, but I was starting to worry about where this friendship was actually headed. I was pretty sure this guy had a crush on me, and soon my suspicions were confirmed. I met this girl at a party I went to named Anna, and I asked her out on a date. She accepted, and I was really thrilled to tell Dominic about it. The second I told him, his face fell. "Why are you going on a date with her?" he asked, sounding almost worried. 'Cause I want to?" "But I'm going to be jealous," he said. "Please, don't go. It'll really hurt me. You wouldn't want to hurt me. I'm your best friend." I'd never actually told this guy he was my best friend before, and I found the way he was acting now both annoying and a little creepy. "I'm sorry, but I told you I was straight before, Dominic. Of course, we're still friends, but I'm not going to stop dating just for you." He remained sulky and miserable the rest of the night. I told myself that he'd have to accept it and get over it soon. But when I was out on the date with Anna, I kept getting phone calls from unknown numbers. I answered at first, but I couldn't hear anything on the other end. It was just as though someone was listening. I started to ignore the calls, but you would not believe how frequently they were coming in. They were dialing in nonstop, and I couldn't even tell the time because they seriously wouldn't stop. I had to put my phone on airplane mode. After about an hour of this, I switched airplane mode off, but the very second I did, the calls came flooding right back. Although I was unnerved, I enjoyed my date with Anna, and we agreed to meet up again. When I got home from the date, Dominic was waiting right outside my dorm, his phone in hand. "How was your date? Do you like her?" he asked, sounding miserable. "Yeah, I do," I told him. "Was that you who kept calling me?" "No," he said, but it was obviously a lie. "Anyway, I've been waiting to tell you. I hear Anna's a massive slut. She sleeps around with loads of guys. You should just stay away. She'll break your heart." Anna had no mutual connections with Dominic, so I asked him how he could possibly know about this. He just told me that he'd done his research. I was angered by this and told him it was none of his business and that I'd find out for myself. This made him tear up, saying how he was just worried about me, and he stormed off. I think he was hoping I'd follow him, but I didn't. I went to my room, angry that he would try to interfere with my life like this. Look, I've had my own unrequited crushes on friends before, and if they don't feel the same way, I never try to force it. But Dominic only got worse. When I got back to my student room, Dominic had sent me screenshots on Facebook of a conversation he had allegedly had with Anna. The messages showed her boasting to him about how she was using me and how she was planning to break my heart. Obviously, this didn't ring true at all, as 1, how would she even know who Dominic was, and why would she message him? 2, why would she tell a friend of mine so openly what her plans for me were, when he would obviously show me? I demanded that he show me the conversation from Anna on his computer screen with me there, but he told me he had deleted the conversations because they were too upsetting for him to read. I knew right there and then that Dominic was deliberately trying to ruin my relationship with Anna through incredibly deceitful and despicable means. I told him I wasn't interested in him, that I would never be, and that he better stop right now. He told me I was being a terrible friend, that all he was doing was trying to look out for me, and that he couldn't believe I was believing a stranger over him. This seriously pissed me off. The way that he was selfishly trying to manipulate me caused me to block him on social media. He started sending me constant texts and calling me nonstop every day, telling me things like he was so depressed over me that he'd start taking heroin and that he was contemplating taking his own life. Basically, just trying to make me worry. He would also constantly send me texts saying he knew Anna was cheating on me, now that we were properly dating, and that I had to come to my senses. He was creeping me out so much that I went to stay with my parents for a bit, as I wasn't comfortable living in the same area as him. I had to block his number because the phone calls were now constant. People from my uni dorm were sending me angry messages because Dominic had told them a really twisted version of what was going on, making them think that Anna was a dirty, STD-ridden whore who I had betrayed him for. It then turned out he had been lying to everyone, telling them that he and I were in a romantic, sexual relationship, and that I had cheated on him with Anna, then left him for her. I furiously set everyone straight, told them that I had never been in a relationship with Dominic, and that everything he'd told them about Anna was bullshit. Most people believed me, although it took a while to convince everyone that Dominic was the liar. He was very manipulative, and although a lot of his lies were ludicrous, he was pretty good at making himself sound legit. I decided to go back to my uni dorm after a while, as it was inconvenient for me to stay at my parents' while school was in session. It was just too far away. The night that I went back, I got back to the dorms quite late, as I really didn't want to run into Dominic. I was so angry about him. I had a new girlfriend and studies to think about, yet because of his fucking obsession and harassment, he was now all I could think about. In a very twisted way, I think this was what he wanted. Positively or negatively, he wanted me thinking about him. When I got to my room, I just laid down on my bed, thinking about what to do, when suddenly, a fucking brick came flying through my window. I jumped a mile and rolled over the side of my bed, hiding there for a moment, thinking that maybe burglars were coming in or something, but nothing more happened. Once I got over the shock, I cautiously stepped over the broken glass and tried to look out the window, when I got a phone call from a number that I didn't recognize. I answered it, and it was Dominic. You're not going to believe what he said, though. I just saw Anna throw a brick through your window and run. I told you she was bad news. You should have listened to me. I told you. I cannot put into words the rage that I felt. I was so angry I couldn't even speak for a moment. But then I exploded. I screamed at him that I knew it was him, and I was calling the police right now. He tried to protest, but I hung up on him and immediately called the authorities. When they arrived, Dominic wasn't in his room. But when it was opened up, a large stash of illegal drugs was found there. The manager of my student halls assured me that Dominic would be getting kicked out over this, and the police said they'd be getting in touch with him soon. After all of this, I never saw Dominic again. I changed my number and never unblocked him on socials. A couple of times I was tempted to out of sheer curiosity, but decided that it wasn't worth it. If he wasn't kicked out, then I think he dropped out of uni, but I don't know exactly what happened to him after. My relationship with Anna didn't last. She was never quite clear on why she ended it, but I actually suspect that Dominic's freakish behavior scared her off, even though it wasn't my fault. Well, life goes on. Dominic, I hope whatever issues you're going through, you sort them out. And I hope you find a guy who actually does want to be with you. Because no matter what your hopes and dreams are, it'll never be me. This story was originally shared on Reddit back in 2017. OP here was around the age of 14 at the time, and they were recounting an incident from when they were much younger. While their age at the time of the encounter is stated, it's not explicitly laid out how much time had elapsed between then and sharing their story. I wanted to give this note early in hopes of sparing anyone listening any type of confusion. Let's begin. It happened in February of 2010. I was 7 years old, living in a quiet apartment complex not far from my school. My mom used to let me walk home on my own. It wasn't far, just a few blocks, and she trusted that I knew the way well enough. Typically, nothing ever really happened on these walks. I'd take the same route every day and be home within 10 minutes. But one day, that wasn't the case at all. As I was walking home like usual, a black car pulled up beside me. I can't remember what kind of car it was, but it looked older. The window rolled down, and inside was a woman with red hair who looked to be in her mid-40s. She smiled at me and introduced herself as Erica. She claimed that she was my dad's sister. Now, my dad had been out of the picture since before I was born. I didn't know much about him, but I did know one thing. He only had brothers. I had actually asked my mom about him just days before, rapid fire style like little kids do. One of the questions that I shot off was whether he had any siblings. She said no sisters, all brothers. So I knew right away that Erica wasn't telling the truth. But instead of walking away or attempting to correct her, I stupidly told her my name. That's when she started asking other questions, stuff like what school I went to and how my brother was doing. It started to feel really strange. I still remember that awful gut feeling that I got that something was off. I told her I wasn't supposed to talk to strangers, and I tried to walk away. But she kept her car rolling alongside me. She kept saying things like, "Oh honey, I promise I don't mean you any harm." All in this friendly tone that only served to make me more nervous. I finally broke into a run, heading straight for my apartment complex. I remembered something my older brother had once told me. If anyone ever followed me home, I should run to our neighbor's door and pretend it was ours. I think he told me this because our neighbor was this older woman who happened to always be home. Plus, the neighbor's door was a lot closer than ours. So that's what I did. When I got to the neighbor's door, I looked back. This woman was still in the car, just watching. Then she drove off. I didn't tell my mom about this. I was scared she'd stop letting me walk home alone, and that was one of the few things that I felt independent about. The next day, this happened again. Same car, same woman, only this time she didn't just talk at me. She offered me a ride. I told her no and told her to leave me alone. Then I ran again, straight to the neighbor's door. This woman followed me again. But just like the day before, I kept quiet. I don't know why I thought I could handle it alone. I guess I didn't want to get into trouble or be seen as overreacting. That weekend, on Saturday, I was at the basketball court in our complex playing with my brother when I saw her car drive past. I panicked and told him I felt sick, although I didn't explain why, and we went back inside. That Sunday after church, we pulled back into our complex and I saw her again. Only this time she was now outside of the car, just standing there. I remember this woman had a big stomach and these oddly small legs. Something about the way she stood there watching gave me goosebumps. As soon as my mom parked the car, I ran inside. My mom and brother stayed in the kitchen to make lunch, and I went to the living room to peek out the window. I watched Erica walk right up to our neighbor's door, the same one that I had run to before. She knocked, and I ducked back from the window. A few minutes later, our neighbor came over. She told my mom that a woman had just come by her place, claiming to be a teacher who needed to talk to me. That was it. No specific reason, just that she needed to talk to me. That's when I lost it. I started crying and finally told my mom everything that had happened. She started crying too. I could tell that she was both terrified and furious. From that point on, obviously she said I couldn't walk home alone anymore. I had to wait for my brother, who was 13, to walk with me every day. She also reported everything to the police. Both my neighbor and I had to give a statement. I remember being really nervous talking to the police officer, but I also remember feeling this weird sort of relief, like maybe this was over now. For the next couple of months, anytime I saw the black car, I pointed it out to my brother. We told our mom every single time, but by April of that year, it all seemed to have died down. We didn't hear anything from the police about whether they actually found her, and eventually, life just moved on. Years went by, and I stopped thinking about it. Until yesterday. I was leaving the grocery store with my best friend, just a regular day, when I felt a tap on my shoulder and turned around. It was her. She smiled and reintroduced herself. "Hi, I'm Erica." My mouth dropped open. I was completely frozen, trying my best to play it cool, but internally, I was freaking out. She offered me a ride again. I grabbed my friend's arm and said we needed to go now. We walked away from this woman as fast as we could. Unlike when I was 7, I told my mom right away. We went back to the police. They took it seriously. We filed another report. Update. I just wanted to thank everyone who shared kind words and support. It really helped me through this. We found out who this woman is. She's been officially identified, but because she never actually harmed me, there are no charges that we can press. The silver lining here is that I could get a restraining order, and that order has already been placed. Hopefully now, this is finally the end of it. I don't know why this woman felt so brave as to approach me multiple times, and separated by several years. The fact that it seemed as if she remembered me, though, gives me chills all over. I can only hope that she hasn't done this with other children, but I have a hard time feeling that that isn't the case. This is going to take a while to explain everything, so stay with me. I promise it all comes back around. My very first car was a dark green 2000 Volkswagen Jetta. It was the most basic of basics when it came to cars. No options whatsoever, except for an automatic transmission. This cost me $300. Slow, dumpy, no right headlight. Drove straight with the steering wheel practically sideways. Let out a cloud of white smoke when it started. Every stereotype of a poor high schooler's first car you can think of. My car was no exception. Despite it being a piece of German crap, I loved that car. I drove it every chance I had. I don't think a day went by that I didn't drive it. I named it Thunder Bunny. She was my baby, my beautiful green baby. But Volkswagens from that generation, Jettas especially, had this pretty bad flaw in the automatic transmission. I'm not sure exactly what causes it, but essentially the transmissions gradually get worse and worse until the car won't shift into third gear, and there's not a thing you can do about it from there. So, a couple of weeks after Halloween of 2019, I was going about 30 miles per hour when the engine suddenly roared, and the car wouldn't speed up. I feared the worst, and my fears were justified. My dad, who's a mechanic by trade, didn't even have hope for my baby. She was gone already, and so, much to my dismay, we started looking for a new car. It only took about a month for us to find her, a dark green 1999 Volkswagen Jetta. Exactly like my old car, except for just about everything. She was faster, had heated leather seats, auto windows, a sunroof, everything. All except for an automatic transmission. This didn't give me any trouble though. I learned to drive on a manual, so it was perfect. I had a new baby. I went from the crackhead neighbor girl to Scarlett Johansson, at least in my eyes. I loved that car even harder. Named it Little Boy, and I was happy. Okay, now to the story, but I have a few more quick things to explain. You can fast forward this if you want. It's important, but not exactly vital to the story. First is for people that might not know, but when you have a manual car, you cannot leave it in gear and take your foot off the clutch. If you do, the car will stall, which is bad. So if you do leave your car in gear, you need to turn the engine off before taking your foot off the clutch. If you don't want to turn the car off or have it turn itself off, you need to pull the handbrake or it will roll away. Now, guess what the only real broken thing on my car was at that point? If you guessed the handbrake, you're right. Okay, so I started working as a pizza delivery driver in a smaller, growing town in Michigan. It was good money, but every once in a while, I delivered to an incredibly sketchy place. I'd even had a few shotguns pulled on me. One night, about 2 months back, I was delivering on a Friday. Usually Fridays are very busy, but this day was a little slow. So when a delivery came in at 8:30, just a half hour before we closed, I jumped on it. I realized I was about 7 miles away, so all of the closing jobs would be done by the time I got back, and I'd be able to leave right after I returned. It was way out of town in a wood-surrounded neighborhood, but again, no work when I got back to the store. Seemed like a good deal to me, and I'm all about those sorts of deals. So I climbed into my car and went to drive the 7 miles. As I pulled up to the house, that was my first inkling of a bad feeling. The house was in a small trailer park type neighborhood next to a lake. The kind that the houses are all a good distance apart with a likely drug problem infused in the neighborhood. In addition, it was completely dark out. There were no lights coming from inside the house, no porch light on outside. There was a single car in the driveway and an open window on the side of the house. I pulled in behind the car in the driveway and sat there for a moment. I knew something was off. By the house being completely dark, I mean, there wasn't so much as a nightlight that I could see. Usually when I deliver to a dark house, there's at least some sign of somebody being home, likely waiting for their pizza, but this house seemed dead. Nevertheless, I put the car in gear, turned off the engine, grabbed the small, cheapest pizza we had and got out. Without my headlights on, there was nothing. I could barely see the house. The only light out was from the dim moon. I walked onto the porch and past the big open window to the front door. That's when I noticed that it was slightly cracked open, just enough for me to see into the void of the house. Thinking of every single horror movie I've ever seen, I said aloud, "F that," and hurried back to my car. Now, I'm a tall, well-built looking guy, but despite my wide shoulders and baggy hoodie, I'm kind of a frail thing, and I can hardly fight off a small dog. I got into my car and turned on the engine. My headlights illuminated the house, and almost simultaneously, the living room light behind the big open window lit up, and a single guy looked out and walked to the front door. I cussed to myself and began to weigh my options. If I went up to the door, I could die. If I noped out of there, I would likely be fired. That meant no new car part, no gas money, no cute dates with my girl, just sitting at home doing virtual schoolwork. It was a stupid choice, I know, but I grabbed the pizza and opened my door. Making a choice I'm damn glad I made. I took the car out of gear and climbed out, mostly so my engine would still be running so that if I needed, I could run back and immediately take off. I walked to the door where the man had opened it the rest of the way. As I got closer, I got my first good look at him. I'm not one to judge a person based on their physical appearance, but this guy's head was completely cleanly shaven, and he was absolutely covered in tattoos. He was wearing a pair of gray jeans and a white tank top. He had this scowl on his face and was staring me dead in the eyes. I looked past him just for a moment into the house, which was completely empty. As I got close enough that I started opening the pizza bag, he started to reach around his waist. I stopped in my tracks. He was staring at me with the most evil grin I've ever seen. I knew in that moment that I was going to die. I had always heard your life seems to flash before your eyes. I thought about my girl, that she wouldn't know what happened. My work would stop delivering upon my disappearance, assuming that my body wasn't ever found. My dad would regret telling me he was happy for me landing this job. That's when I heard it, that distinct sound of gravel under tires. My only pathetically small chance of escape was now rolling away. I didn't even look back at the car to know that. I kept my stare on the man, and I was about to say, "F you," when he looked back to my car. I heard that sound of the car rolling. It was getting closer. The guy's eyes went from the driveway to behind me. I finally looked over my shoulder. My car had rolled backwards and had come to a smooth stop near the mailbox of the house. I looked back at the guy who had this nervous look on his face now. He took a glance back at me and scowled once again, and took his hand from around his waist. He reached into his front pocket and took out $12 before handing it to me. I gave him the pizza and watched him slam the door shut. I ran back to my car and practically tore the door off the hinge trying to get in. I looked back at the house once more, and that man was standing in front of the window staring out at me. You better believe I nearly spun the tires on my way out of there. I kept glancing at my mirrors until I started driving under streetlights. This was easily the scariest moment I've ever had. As soon as I got back to the store, I told my boss about it, and she called the police. Just like so many others on here, we never heard anything else about it. I assumed the police went to the house and only found a small cheese pizza. I started carrying a knife on me at all times after this, and my boss is considering getting trackers for our pizza bags. Only recently, I realized this is a sort of butterfly effect. I thought it was the worst thing ever that my transmission went out, and I cursed Volkswagen for designing such a terrible automatic transmission. But if that transmission was still working, then I would have still had Thunder Bunny when this all happened. I would have put the car in park, and it would have sat there while whatever would have happened, happened. To this day, I have zero doubts in my mind that that man was planning on doing something terrible to me. So, this is my story about how German engineering saved me from getting murdered. I can only assume that when my car began to roll, that guy assumed that there was somebody else inside of it, possibly backing up to pick me up. The engine wasn't revving, but if you're about to take someone's life, you probably aren't focused on those other details. A detail that likely saved my life that night.